Hags are more than just crones with evil magic. They're ancient tormentors, delighting in bending reality and corrupting those they encounter. However, for a novice DM or one who likes to have things laid out, like me, the green hag stat block doesn't even tell us how hags can grant wishes or grant great boons. Yes, Mr. or Mrs. Veteran DM watching this right now, you can easily make this stuff up on the fly, but some of us really enjoy having clear guidelines to work with. Now, the challenge of this video was coming up with mechanics that were representative of the Hag's lore and reputation. In fact, I had to scrap the entire stat block I was working on about 3 or 4 different times trying to quote-unquote reinvent the wheel. And, after throwing hands with myself, I finally settled on a design that I think you'll all enjoy. So, let's read the 2014 Monster Manual lore on these old crones, and let's see what we can expect from 10 years ago. As always, my stat blocks are here to spark your creativity, not for me to gloat or claim I'm better than Wizards of the Coast. If you dislike my stat blocks, tell me what you'd change or what you'd like to see in the future down in the comments. Let's get into it. Okay, students. Page 176 of your 2014 Monster Manuals, get them out. We're going to start off with Hags. Hags represent all that is evil and cruel. Though they resemble withered crones, there is nothing mortal about these monstrous creatures, whose forms reflect only the wickedness in their hearts. Faces of evil. Ancient beings with origins in the Feywild, hags are tankers on the mortal world. Their withered faces are framed by long, frayed hair, horrid moles and warts dot their blotchy skin, and their long, skinny fingers are tipped by claws that can slice open flesh with a touch. Their simple clothes are always tattered and filthy. All hags possess magical powers, and some of them have an affinity for spellcasting. They can alter their forms or curse their foes, and their arrogance inspires them to view their magic as a challenge to the magic of the gods, whom they blaspheme at every opportunity. Hags name themselves in darkly whimsical ways, claiming monikers such as Black Morwen, Peggy Pigknuckle, Grandmother Titchwillow, Nana Shug, Rotten Ethel, or Auntie Wormtooth. Now we're going to skip down to Dark Bargains. Arrogant to a fault, hags believe themselves to be the most cunning of creatures, and they treat all others as inferior. Even so, a hag is open to dealing with mortals as long as the mortals show proper respect and deference. Over their long lives, hags accumulate much knowledge of local lore, dark creatures, and magic, which they are pleased to sell. Hags enjoy watching mortals bring about their own downfall, and bargain with a hag is always dangerous. The terms of such bargains typically involve demands to compromise principles or give up something dear, especially if the thing lost diminishes or negates the knowledge gained through the bargain. So there's a ton of hag lore in the 2014 Monster Manual, but I specifically want to focus on the green hags, so we're going to skip to the green hags lore. The wretched and hateful green hags dwell in dying forests, lonely swamps, and misty moors, making their homes in caves. Green hags love to manipulate other creatures into doing their bidding, masking their intentions behind layers of deception. They lure victims to them by mimicking voices calling out for help, or drive unwanted visitors away by imitating the cries of fierce beasts. They are obsessed with tragedy. Green hags revel in the failings and tragedies of other creatures. They derive joy from bringing people low and seeing hope turn into despair, not just for individuals, but for whole nations. So, as always, we have lots and lots of lore to work with. I'm not focusing on hag covens, I'm just focusing on the green hag. Now eventually in the future, when I rework all of the hags, we'll go back to covens and maybe we'll edit how covens work, but I really wanted to focus on the green hags themselves. So the 2014 stat block is interesting because it's not a bad stat block, it's actually quite cool, but there's a couple things that are missing on the stat block that I think could absolutely help most dungeon masters that are lazy like me, or new dungeon masters that like to see every waking thing that a hag could possibly do based on its lore. Green hags are medium fae. They are neutral evil, which means they do things all centered around their own desires. They don't care about anybody else but themselves. They have an armor class of 17, natural armor, so their fey flesh makes them naturally hard to damage, which is really cool. They have a lot of hit points, 82 hit points, 11d8 plus 33. They have a speed of 30 feet, and let's look at the ability scores. So the ability scores are actually pretty good for, this is a CR3 creature. The problem is Wizards tried to encapsulate all of the tiers of the Green Hag and represent it on a single stat block, which is, of course, the problem with D&D 5e is they don't give us enough variations, and they try to cram every variation into one stat block and represent the entire lifeline or life cycle of the creature. Anyways, let's keep going. So, the ability scores. 18 strength, 12 dexterity, 16 constitution, 13 intelligence, 14 wisdom, 14 charisma. No negatives, all positives. Green hags are pretty scary already with just that alone. Now, they're lacking saving throw proficiencies. That's kind of a gripe that I have with the stat block. But they have skill proficiencies, which are cool, with Arcana, Deception, Perception, and Stealth. Those are all pretty good, and I think those represent the hag's personality accurately. They have a dark vision of 60 feet. They speak Common, Draconic, and Sylvan. Obviously, the languages can vary depending on where you're placing them in your world. Challenge rating 3. So these are supposed to be the low-level hags, but I feel like there could be a lot stronger versions of the Green Hag herself. This sort of looks like a hag that's in the middle somewhere between like a CR5 to CR3, and they just slapped CR3 on there, so I don't know. Let's look at the special traits. We have Amphibious, so this hag can breathe air and water, so that's pretty creepy. I actually ran a hag like this once for one of my player characters' backstories, and the green hag would go under the water and come up behind people and attack them, so that was really fun to play around with. As long as her environment is representative of her lore, which you should be putting her in swamps, misty moors, real dark, foresty, muddy, murky areas. She has spell casting. Now, weirdly enough, the Green Hag does not have a lot of spells. I think all hags should be insanely good at spell casting on top of all of their other special abilities. But they can at will cast Dancing Lights, Minor Illusion, and Vicious Mockery. Pretty sure those are all cantrips. All 3 of those. So she just has 3 cantrips, and that's all she can cast. Vicious Mockery is good, but I would have liked to even see a leveled spell that she could possibly just cast at will. That would be pretty cool. Mimicry is another interesting one. Lots of roleplay heavy things on this stat block. So the hag can mimic animal sounds and humanoid voices. A creature that hears the sound can tell they are imitations with a successful DC 14 insight check. Creepy. You do, creepy Wendigo-esque mimic voices of other humanoids, like somebody screaming "help me" in the distance, and you draw the party in, and suddenly they're surrounded by this dark misty fog, and they don't know where to go because they can't see, and then an old lady comes wandering out of the marsh asking them for help. That's the hag. Just things like that. That special trait can go a long way. Let's look at the actions here. Claws. These are 2d8 slashing damage on a hit. Curiously, that's higher damage than a troll's claw attacks, and trolls are giants. So the problem with that is green hags specifically, it says that their touch can actually wither living creatures away, much like a shadow's strength drain. And that's not here on the stat block. I think it should be. So you're going to see that on mine. I did reduce the damage and I added the strength drain. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. We're not done yet. Illusionary appearance. This is pretty cool. She essentially shape changes into a humanoid. Another creature of her general size and humanoid shape. So she can shape change like a changeling. Takes a DC 20 intelligence investigation check to discern if it's actually her or not, but if your players don't expect the creature that they're interacting with to be a hag, why would they try to figure out if that's a hag or not? So yeah, that's a pretty cool infiltration-esque ability. Like, you could just have the hag as a merchant somewhere in your villages. Invisible passage. This is a strong ability, but it's an action, so it's a slow ability. This is a pre-combat ability, more than likely. The hag magically turns invisible until she attacks or casts a spell, or until her concentration ends. While she's invisible, she leaves no physical evidence of her passage, so she can be tracked only by magic. So she leaves no footprints, she doesn't make any noise, and obviously anything she's carrying or wearing turns invisible also. That's pretty much implied with invisibility, because it would be a useless spell otherwise. But that's a cool, much stronger version of invisibility. So she's walking through the swamp, stalking the party. Nobody knows she's there. She's not even leaving footprints behind. She's not making the slopping sounds of her walking through the mud even. That's pretty cool. Now, I don't think this is a bad stat block. This is a really cool stat block, but I think we can do better. So let's jump into my rework and see what I did better. So after looking at the 2014 Hag, we're just looking to improve upon the cool stuff that's already there with this rework. We're not trying to reinvent the entire stat block, although I kind of did that. That's what took me so long with these stat blocks. Interestingly enough, hags have tiers, much like dragons. How you go from wormling all the way up to ancient in 5e. It's actually supposed to go up to great worm, which is an even scarier version of a dragon. Anyways, Newt is a newborn hag. If you're not aware of how hags procreate, they devour human infants, and after devouring this child, the hag gives birth to a new daughter who looks human until the 13th birthday, whereupon the child transforms into the spitting image of her hag mother. So the Newt is supposed to be the hag upon reaching her 13th birthday, I believe, or a hag that was recently having a coming of age. So she's a hag in training still. This is a newborn hag, if you will. So this is a lower level hag. This is my version of the CR3 hag. Let's go down here. Armor class is 15. So actually a little lower than the 2014 Hag. Hit points are much lower than the 2013 Hag. Now don't get too irritated about that. It's a nerf, but you're going to see much stronger Hags going forward. The ability scores are much less, so this is a Hag that's been toned down. Just see it like that. I did give her a saving throw proficiency for Charisma because she should have that. That's her spellcasting ability, Charisma. She should specialize in Charisma. She's all about deception and things of that nature. So you're going to see here, I gave her a vulnerability. And I started this with my Barlaguras. I wanted to go back and start bringing Cold Iron back into the mix. So Cold Iron is a metal. It's a special material that is used in crafting certain weapons. So Cold Iron does more damage to things like demons and Fae specifically. So the Hag here has vulnerability from bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from attacks made with cold iron weapons. Otherwise, she takes damage as normal. You don't need a magic weapon to damage the Newt. But we'll go down. Everything else is the same. It's still CR3. Let's go down to the special traits on here. Embodiment of Evil. If you've seen my Fomorian rework, I gave this to the Fomorians because Hags are pure evil. And the things that I gave to them, you need a little bit more protection. So, Embodiment of Evil states, while under the effects of protection spells from evil and good, creatures are immune to the Hag's leveled spells and curses. You might say, that's OP, that's too strong. You're gonna see why you need that. And I don't think protection from evil and good can actually target multiple creatures and its concentration. So the cleric is going to have to focus on trying to keep that up, and if they drop concentration, well, it's going to make you have not a good time. So we have mimicry. The Hag can imitate animal sounds and voices. A creature that hears mimicry can discern it's fake with a DC 14 insight check. You can see I cut the wording down on that. I did give her magic resistance, so she has advantage on saving throws versus spells and other magical effects. So she's already a little bit more powerful with that. That's going to make her a lot stronger. Let's get into the actions now. Alright, so jumping into the actions, we have Wretched Claws. They only have one attack with these because they don't need any other attacks, trust me. So Sapping Touch, and she doesn't have multi-attack, keep that in mind. Sapping Touch. On a hit, it does only 2d6 now, piercing or slashing damage, her choice. And if you're a living creature, you have to make a DC 12 con save. If you fail, your strength score is reduced by 1d4. You die if that score is reduced to 0. And this reduction lasts until targeted by a Remove Curse spell. But in addition to casting Remove Curse, it requires a DC 12 spellcasting ability check. If this check fails, the caster takes 2d8 psychic damage, and it has to wait until the next dawn before attempting to remove the curse again. So this is a curse. Her Sapping Touch that is sucking the strength out of your body, it is a curse, and that is just on her melee attack. That's already something that I wanted to really represent with all of the Hags, is permanent debilitating effects that goes along with everything that she does, because in every sense of media that a Hag is represented, they curse you, and it's a lasting effect. You shouldn't be able to just say, remove curse, the curse is no more. I think there should be a little bit more of a challenge for getting rid of a curse. Now, not every curse needs that, but particularly strong ones from creatures that are infamous for casting curses, I feel like should require something like that. Let's keep going here. We have Swamp Bolt. This is her next attack action that she has. This is a ranged spell attack, +4 to hit, 120 foot range. So this is the Hag's version of quote-unquote Eldritch Blast, kinda, but not really. It's just something that she has for consistent ranged damage other than Vicious Mockery. Because Vicious Mockery forces a saving throw, while this is actually attacking the AC of a creature. And this has some debuffs situated with it, so it does 1d10 magical bludgeoning damage if you're a medium or smaller creature. So medium, small, or tiny. I keep seeing people getting confused about this in the comments. That is covering from medium all the way down to tiny, not medium or small, ignoring tiny. It's from medium down to tiny. If you are one of those size categories, you are covered in a heavy mass of sludge and muck, and your movement speed is reduced by 10 feet until the end of your next turn. So the sludge falls off after. Illusionary appearance has not changed. I just cut the wording down on it so it took up less space on the stat block. Invisible passage has not changed. I cut the wording down, I added concentration to the name, and I put it in parentheses to remind you that this is a concentration spell-like ability. Now let's get into Hag magic. So, this is interesting. So it just tells you her spell save DC, her to hit with spell attacks. I don't think she has any spell attacks in her spell list, but you'll see Newt curses count as second level spells for the purpose of counter spells. Horrible curses. A remove curse spell requires a DC 12 spellcasting check. Failure, the caster takes 2d8 psychic damage and cannot attempt to remove the curse until the next dawn. So, we'll get into this, but we'll just quickly go over her spell list. Now, originally when I made this stat block, I wanted to give her spells that were Hag-like spells, but unfortunately, that was what I meant when I said I was trying to reinvent the wheel. It was making the stat blocks way too cumbersome. I ended up scrapping that entire idea, and I just gave them regular spells. So, she has an actual spell list now. She has Hex, Inflict Wounds, Charm Person, Blindness, Deafness, Misty Step, Ray of Enfeeblement, Fear, and Blink. So, pretty fairly common, not really common, but I think those cover a decent array of spells that the Hag can cast. Now let's get into the horrible curses. So she can only cast these twice a day, and she has to do this within melee. So what she's going to want to do is use Invisible Passage, turn invisible, sneak up on somebody, and then use the horrible curse, which will bring her out of invisibility, but very detrimental. So the duration on these is permanent. It requires remove curse to get rid of them. So let's look at the first curse that we have, and this is for a Newt. Okay, this is a Hag that's still learning, so she's being taught how to inflict curses. So these are not super bad, but they're pretty bad if you're a low-level character especially. So, Curse of the Leaden Feet. DC 12 con save. If you fail, your movements become slow and uncoordinated. Your movement speed is reduced by 10 feet, and you have disadvantage on dexterity checks and saving throws. And that's just forever until somebody casts Remove Curse and succeeds that spellcasting ability check. There should be lasting impacts. After fighting a Hag, your party should come out of that with things that are attached to them, a curse. You're fighting an ancient Fey being. Now, this Fey being, granted, because it's a Newt, is not quote-unquote ancient, but they're steeped in ancient lore, and this was the best way I felt I could represent that. So, Curse of Brittle Bones is the next one. This is also a con save. If you fail, you get vulnerability to bludgeoning damage as your bones become fragile. So that actually plays off of Swamp Bolt. She can give you vulnerability to bludgeoning damage, hit you with Swamp Bolt. That's going to deal double the amount of damage. Pretty cool. Not anything too crazy still. Curse of Crippling Doubt. This one's a little bit more debilitating, and one creature can have multiple curses on them. So if your Hag is really, really mad at somebody, she can cast these on 2 of these on one person a day. Or if you have multiple green Hag Newts, multiple people getting cursed with multiple curses. You can't have the same curse twice, obviously, because they don't stack, but this one's a wisdom save, which is already going to be much harder to succeed for most classes. The creature's mind is filled with an overwhelming sense of self-doubt. It has -2 to all saving throws and ability checks. So she makes you feel like you're not able to achieve anything. It's that torment. She's inflicting that mental anguish upon you. And then the final curse for the Newt is Curse of Mental Static. This is a intelligence saving throw, so this is going to be the hardest one to succeed. Most classes do not have intelligence. Wizards, artificers, I believe those are the only 2 classes that really focus on intelligence as their main stat. So if you fail this, your thoughts are overwhelmed with white noise, causing disadvantage on intelligence saves and concentration checks. So pretty bad if you get that, especially if you're a spellcaster. But overall, not too deadly, but not easy to take down either. She's got a lot of things she can do to get away from you with Misty Step in her spell list. Invisible Passage is still there. I think this is a pretty cool stat block. Let me know what you guys think, but that's the lowest level Hag. Let's move up the ladder a bit to the next one. Okay, so here we go. This is the Sister. So from Newt to Sister. This one is got most of the same stats as the Hag from the Monster Manual. However, she has more saving throws. I'm not going to go over every single thing that's different about this one, because there's a lot of repeating stuff, but she has just slightly more capability than the Hag below her. So she has a Dexterity and a Wisdom saving throw proficiency this time. And this Hag is a little bit harder to damage too, because she has damage resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing with weapons that aren't made with cold iron. So that's even magic weapons. She has resistance to damage from it, unless your magic weapon was crafted with cold iron. So this is me kind of adding more lore to your world, making cold iron exist, so you can remove that if you disagree with it. I like it. I think Hags should be hard to kill, but if you exploit their weakness, which is cold iron, you're going to be able to more effectively take them down. Damage immunities. Bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical attacks with weapons that aren't made with cold iron. So, if you don't have a magic weapon, or your weapon is not made with cold iron, you cannot damage the Hag. Your spellcasters are going to have to do the heavy lifting, while you are unfortunately not going to be able to do anything. So your players are obviously going to prepare before they fight a green Hag, or if they don't, this can become a BBEG later on in your games. Now, moving on. Let's look at the special trait that all of the Hags going forward are going to have. This is Twisted Wish. The Hag grants a wish only if a creature strikes a bargain with her. The exchange is usually something that is painful for the creature to part with, and I have examples in here. A mother's unborn child, a noble's wealth, a painter's eyesight, a singer's voice. That's just to give you inspiration. It doesn't have to be one of those things, but that's just an example. The outcome is often a hidden drawback designed to cause long-term misery. These bargains can never be undone except by another wish spell, the Hag's reversal, or her death. The Hag rarely initiates deals, but may offer one when threatened or near death, seeking to escape her fate by exploiting the desperation of others. That's interesting. Now the Hag has a way to actually cast wishes. Now, it's not a traditional wish spell where she can just say, well, I wish this character was gone and never existed. This is a bargain, so this is a twisted wish. This is a monkey's paw wish. She's not going to be able to just use this. This is something that the Hag will not use unless she's bargaining with somebody. So she cannot use this in a combat sense, like how a god would be able to just wish you out of existence. That's not how this works. But yeah, there you go. You now have a Hag that can accurately grant you a boon or some sort of powerful buff to your characters, with the drawback that that buff is going to come back and bite you somewhere down the line. It might not even be you. It might be somebody close to you or somebody you don't even know. You might have just ruined their life somehow with that wish. Helps out with role-playing, helps you out as a dungeon master. I think that's a cool thing to have on the stat block. Of course, if you disagree, just delete it from the stat block. Anyways, moving down to the actions, this Hag has multi-attack now. She can make 2 attacks with her claws or swamp bolts. Her claw attacks are now going to be a lot more interesting to deal with, because she could potentially strength drain you twice with each hit, and the save has gone up by 2 points, so instead of a DC 12 it's DC 14 now, and it still drains only 1d4, but you know, if you get drained by 2d4 to your strength mod, that is terrifying. That can wipe out a player character really fast if they're not careful, like always. My design philosophy is prepare, prepare, prepare when you fight ancient evils. Otherwise, you're not going to have a good time. Also, you'll see the damage from the psychic damage, if you fail the check, has increased to 4d8 instead of 2d8 now. So now that the hag is getting stronger, her curses are taking hold, and it's much more difficult to remove these curses from these living creatures. Her Swamp Bolt is the same, it just has a higher to hit. But she can cast 2 of them now. Everything else is the same. We'll get to the hag magic for the sister hag. And you'll see sister curses instead of Newt curses. Her curses count as 3rd level spells now for the purposes of remove curse. And the same thing with this. You take 4d8 psychic damage now if you fail when you're attempting to remove the curse. Now her spells have increased greatly. She has much more things to work with. Much more spell slots. Her cantrips are a lot stronger. They have leveled up to 5th level in terms of the damage increase for Vicious Mockery. Poison Spray she also has now. You can see the spell list. Spike Growth is new. That's a very strong spell. My players used that against me. And I actually had to use it on myself because my players charmed an enemy, and I hated myself for it, but I'm not an adversarial DM, so I screwed myself over with that spell once, so I added it to the stat block. It's a very hag-like spell. Now, let's get into the interesting part of the sister hag. Her horrible curses are much more debilitating, much scarier. This is going to be the curses going forward until we get to the very high echelon of hags. She can cast these 4 times a day. Still has to be in melee range. Much stronger, however. So we have a curse for every ability score now. So 1 for strength, dex, con, int, wiz, charisma. Let's go from top to bottom, shall we? This is Curse of Feeble Flesh. This requires a strength save. If you fail, your muscles painfully wither. You have disadvantage on strength checks, saves, and attack rolls. Whenever you attack with a melee weapon, you dash or you lift anything over 5 pounds, you take 2d6 necrotic damage. That is a hag curse, if I have ever seen one. That is going to really hammer home that you are fighting a creature that specializes in curses. I love that. It took a while to come up with all of these. Yeah, this is what took so long when crafting these stat blocks. This is why it's been quite some time since my last video, but I'm hoping you guys are going to see these and kind of go, wow, those are awesome. Otherwise, you can say, wow, those suck, and tell me how they suck in the comment section in a constructive way, please, not in a vitriolic way. Anyways, Curse of Trembling Bones. This one is for your dexterity characters. The target's body shakes uncontrollably. They have disadvantage on dex checks, saves, and attack rolls. So when I say attack rolls, that is anything that is using your dexterity as part of the attack roll. So your movement speed is reduced by 10 feet. Whenever you attempt to dash, disengage, or dodge, you have to succeed on a DC 14 con save. If you fail that con save, you fall prone. So it's like you're having a seizure that just never stops. And remember, these are permanent until somebody removes the curse from that character. So if you fight this hag and she curses all of you, it's representative of her stat block, right? I mean, you're gonna see, like, this is what it should feel like to fight a hag, in my opinion. Controversial, maybe. Let's keep going. Curse of Withering. The target's body becomes frail. It has disadvantage on con checks, saves, and attack rolls. If you have anything that uses con as the attack roll, I left it in there just in case. You might homebrew something, you never know. It has vulnerability to poison damage. Whenever the target takes damage, it suffers an additional 1d6 necrotic damage. It cannot regain hit points by any means until the start of its next turn. Anytime you take damage until the start of your next turn, you can't regain hit points. Pretty nasty. You get hit with a fireball, guess what? You're not regaining any hit points, even if the cleric casts Mass Cure Wounds until the end of your next turn, or until the start of your next turn. So I like that one a lot. This one really, it was hard to figure out what to do for Constitution because the Strength and the Constitution ones kind of go hand in hand, but I think that one accurately feels different from the Strength-based one. Curse of Maddening Delirium is for intelligence. The target's mind is clouded with a haze of incoherent whispers. It has disadvantage on intelligence checks, saves, and attack rolls, and while concentrating on a spell, you have to roll a d6 at the start of each of your turns. On a 3 or lower, you drop concentration. It's not going to be useful on a fighter for sure, but it will be useful if you cast that on a wizard, or a cleric, or a druid, or anybody who can cast and concentrate on spells. Curse of Distorted Reality is for wisdom. Target senses become plagued by constant illusions. You have disadvantage on wisdom checks, saves, and attack rolls. You take 1d6 psychic damage whenever you take an action, and your reality warps around you. You have to make a DC 14 wisdom save. On a failure, you randomly attack an ally within range with an attack, spell, or similar hostile action before regaining control of your senses. So you start losing your mind, you start seeing everybody as an enemy around you. Now this specifically says allies because the hag formulated this curse to make you turn on those around you, like loved ones. So you could say like a husband, for a plot hook for a quest, a husband has this curse and, you know, he stubbed his toe when he came into the house, he lost his mind and he killed his wife or something dark like that. That's kind of how it's going to be when you fight a hag. Really dark, really creepy, really bad storylines. Curse of the Forked Tongue is the final one. The target's words turn deceitful, and its voice becomes disturbingly unrecognizable. You have disadvantage on charisma checks, saves, and attack rolls. You have to roll a d100 when casting a spell with verbal components. On a 50 or lower, the spell fails, but the slot is not consumed. So, that's also sort of hitting the spellcasters, but it's in a different way. So that one straight up prevents you from casting a spell rather than concentrating on one, but the slot doesn't get consumed, so it's not too terrible, but it's pretty terrible. So that's going to be the Sister Hag. Hopefully you guys think that one was a lot cooler. We're not done yet. We have a couple more, so let's keep going. Alright, we're getting into the upper echelon of hags. Going forward, these are going to be very powerful. I'm warning you up front, so don't get mad at me, because these are strong. So, going down the line here, her stats across the board are increased. Her AC is higher, her hit points are higher. Everything else is the same, other than she now has a true sight of 60 feet instead of a dark sight of 60 feet. So, yeah, no amount of trickery is going to catch her off guard. She's going to see through your illusions. She's going to see you if you're invisible. You have to figure something out when you're fighting this hag. It's going to be difficult. This is a high-level boss monster, and if you add minions into her lair with her, I'm sorry for your player characters, because it's not going to be an easy fight whatsoever. But hey, we're here to challenge people, man. That's what I like to do. So, you're going to see something immediately that is going to be controversial. We have limited magic immunity. So if you've ever ran a Rakshasa before, I started to give this hag the limited magic immunity. Now, Rakshasa is immune to 6th level spells or lower. This hag is immune to 3rd level spells or lower, if she wishes to be. And then she also has advantage on saves and other magical effects. So, very, very powerful. Very terrifying. This hag also has mythic resistance, so we're not at the legendary level yet. We don't have legendary resistances, but we have mythic resistances. So she gets to add a +10 bonus to a saving throw roll if she wants to, 3 times a day. Getting pretty deadly. We have her multi-attack is the same from the other hags. However, for her Wretched Claws, you'll notice that saving throw is very high. So she's gonna make 2 claw attacks with a DC 17 con save per hit. If you fail, she's reducing your strength score by 1d4, and now you're taking 8d8 psychic damage if you fail the attempt to remove that curse. That's pretty powerful. DC 17 con save, your players are gonna guaranteed fail that. At just mathematically speaking, somebody's gonna fail that 50% of the time at least for DC 17. Unless you're a fighter or a barbarian, very rarely are you going to succeed that saving throw twice. They're going to fail at least one of those. So that's pretty much not pretty much, it's not guaranteed. There's no guarantees when it comes to dice rolling, but you know what I mean. Swamp Bolt's the same, hasn't changed. Has not increased in damage. I think I actually should make that 2d10 for the Auntie. I think that would be fine. The illusionary appearance investigation check DC has gone up to 25 now, so if this hag is walking amongst the city, it's going to take a DC 25 investigation check to figure her out. Let's see here. Invisible passage is also different. This is now like greater invisibility, so she becomes invisible until she loses concentration. So she can attack and cast spells while she's invisible as long as she's concentrating on this. And she doesn't come out of invisibility unless you break her concentration, and she just stays invisible. So that's pretty deadly. Here's the BG3 Fanatics ability here. Yes, I sort of took this from Baldur's Gate 3. Shoot me, why don't you? Alright, it's a cool ability. So this is Splintered Reflection. The hag creates up to 4 illusionary duplicates, and that 4 comes from her charisma modifier. So if you want to change that, make sure you do it based off her charisma mod. So she creates up to 4 illusionary duplicates within 60 feet, which share initiative with her. She swaps place with one of these upon casting. It's going to be in your head, whichever one that she swaps places with. Each duplicate can make its own attacks, cast its own spells, but when they do that, they're using the spell slots of the hag, so they're not like true clones. They're illusionary duplicates. They last 1 minute or until the hag loses concentration. As a bonus action, she can move each duplicate up to 30 feet within 120 feet of her. They share armor class. They vanish if they are damaged. And the hag has advantage on attack rolls when both she and a duplicate are within 5 feet of a target. So that's a trickster domain cleric ability, but that's juiced up. It's jacked to the tits, as they say. Very strong, very scary. That's horrifying. Once a day is plenty for something like that. She's now a puzzle monster. A monster that's just straight up really hard to fight. Borderline overpowered, but honestly, I expect a hag of this level to be overpowered. It should be hard to kill a hag that is this strong and has lived this long. So, her curses count as 5th level spells. She has 3 extra curses that are unique to her. Her spell slots have gone up to 6th level spells now, so she has 4th, 5th, and 6th level spells. Well, the other one had 4th, but she has 5th and 6th level spells now. One of them being Cloud Kill, one of them being Circle of Death. Very scary, very deadly. She has Counter Spell. Yeah, she's gonna be pretty nasty. Her curse number should be 5 a day total. I accidentally made it 3, so I have to fix that. Didn't catch that. We'll fix it in post, don't worry. I'll be putting it into the Discord. It'll be updated and fixed. So here we go. There's 3 new curses here. Mind Snare. This is the first one. This one really needs no introduction because it, in and of itself, some dungeon masters might really hate this, but honestly, I like it. I might just be a mean dungeon master, but see, if you fail this DC 17 intelligence save, you take 2d8 psychic damage. You're paralyzed as you're trapped in your own nightmares. And remember, these just last indefinitely unless the hag chooses to end it. You kill the hag, or somebody casts remove curse, which, might I remind you, if you fail this remove curse check, it's 8d8 psychic damage, and the character just remains stunned until the next dawn, essentially. So I kind of took that from BG3 too, also, but let's keep moving. We have Reflective Torment. The target's facial features are removed and trapped within a hand mirror in the hag's possession. Its face becomes featureless, making it blind and mute. The target cannot cast spells or use abilities that require verbal components. Yeah, so it's like she holds a hand mirror up and she takes your face with the hand mirror. That's pretty flavorful for a hag, I think. That's a very tormentative thing that she could do to somebody, I feel like. And now we have Veil of Submission. And this should look familiar to some of you that have played Baldur's Gate 3. On a failure, a mask appears over the creature's face, and it is magically charmed. The charmed creature obeys the hag's verbal and telepathic commands. If the target suffers any harm or receives a command that would cause it to inflict pain upon itself, so I don't get demonetized, it can repeat the saving throw and regain control of itself until the end of its next turn. Afterwards, it's charmed again. So that's a pretty scary ability. Every other curse is the same. Those are just her unique curses. Yeah, I'd say those are pretty good. Pretty good, pretty scary. We're not done yet. We have a single hag to go over still, so this final one I think is going to be everybody's favorite. It's going to be the one that people either hate or love, so let's get into it, shall we? Alright, this is a hag that is on the same level as an archfey. This is a granny. Okay, this is a hag that has been alive for thousands and thousands of years. This hag is most definitely a BBEG. This is an end campaign boss for your D&D games. Okay? This is going to take much preparation, a lot of preparation should go into fighting something like this. So 22 armor class. So even to hit her, you have to roll a 22. Hit points are 161. It's about on the level of a lich. It's not, this hag doesn't need 900 hit points to be very scary. Let's look here. She has 120 foot true sight. And now her limited magic immunity is spells of 6th level or lower. She cannot be affected by them. And she has legendary resistances. So, yes, this is a legendary creature. Her Wretched Claws require a DC 21 Constitution saving throw. 21. That's almost a guarantee strength drain. It's going to take somebody with very high Constitution, or you're just getting your strength drained. There's no getting around it, pretty much. Swamp Bolt does 2d10 on this one. She also makes 3 attacks, mind you. So if she makes 3 Wretched Claw attacks, and that's 2d8 a hit, she drains your strength by 3d4 a turn. Then she Misty Steps away. Good luck fighting that. She can remain invisible this entire time, so she could have advantage on these plus 11 to hit claw attacks, making 3 of them a turn while she's invisible. Doesn't leave any footprints or trace to even let you know where she's at. I would say this is a viable boss endgame for your games. Splintered Reflection now has 3 uses a day. Let's get into her magic. Her spell save DC is 21. So, yeah, that's pretty good. Her curses count as 7th level spells. So if you try to counter a granny's curse, it is a 7th level spell that you are going to have to try to counter spell. To remove any of her curses, it's a DC 21 spellcasting check. This one's different. The caster and the cursed creature take 16d8 psychic damage, and the caster cannot attempt to remove the curse until the next dawn. So her curses are so strong, and they take hold over a creature in such a powerful way that even the creature that you're trying to pry the curse out of takes this immense mental damage from it. And not to mention, she also has 9th level spells. So on top of all of that, her 9th level spells, she doesn't have any unique curses because I felt that the curses that she has already are overpowered, pretty much. A DC 21 intelligence save, or you are paralyzed until somebody casts remove curse on you, and the DC to get that curse off of that person is a DC 21. She can do this 5 times a day. Yeah, I don't think she needs any more. If she does that to a barbarian, to put this into perspective, the barbarian's out of the fight the whole time. Now that's very mean, and you can take that out if you disagree with it and just replace it with one of the sister hag curses, the intelligence one, but I myself, a distinguished gentleman of challenging my players and tormenting them, I'm going to keep that on the stat block. So she has legendary actions. I did not give her lair actions because those are really up to what your game is. So if you put her somewhere that I didn't account for and one of her lair actions doesn't make sense, I don't want to do that to you. I want you to kind of come up with your own lair actions. But let's look at her legendary actions. So she has 3 legendary actions. Grand's Punishment. She makes a Swamp Bolt, Claw Attack, or uses an at-will spell. So she can cast a cantrip, use her Swamp Bolt attack, or her Claw Attack. So she could potentially make 5 wretched Claw attacks and drain your stats by 5d4 if you fail the saving throw 5 times. Yeah, I know. It's very powerful. Trixie Step. The hag moves up to her speed without provoking opportunity attacks. I think every legendary creature needs a way to move. So this is to get away from like the barbarian who has her cornered or something. Fairy Fade. The hag uses Invisible Passage, and this costs 2 actions to cast. And then the final one, 1-2, Grand's coming for you. 3 actions total. She uses Splintered Reflection. She has 3 times a day she can use that. So that will conclude the open access hags that I've created for everybody. I'm going to have a couple extra ones on my Patreon if you are interested. The link will be in the description. Also, if you want to download all of these creature stat blocks, I will be uploading them to my Patreon for free, and then also to my Discord for free. So join the Discord. Link is in the description, or the Patreon link is in the description for the ones that are just available for everybody. But if you want to help me out, support the channel, support me, so I can continue to do this, have more time, potentially make a living out of doing YouTube videos, which is my goal. I would love to do that. Support the channel by going to Patreon, and if you sub to just the $3 tier, you gain access to bonus stat blocks that will be released with every upcoming video, and monthly map releases. So anyways, this has been DM Dungeon Mastery. I thank you all for joining me with this green hag stat block rework, and thank you for being patient with me for my video upload speed has been lacking a little bit. I've just been having a hard time with life, so I apologize, but I got it done. Tough through it, muscled through it. So I will see you guys in the next video. Keep an eye out on the YouTube polls for the next creature rework, and this is DM Dungeon Mastery. Later.